and I'm extremely excited. As you guys know, we went on a very small hiatus and we are back. So this is our first show of the season, and what better way than to start off with an amazing coach that I have had the pleasure to connect with through Twitter, and I just love what she stands for. I love her mission and how she helps women. I'm sure anybody, but I know she targets women, and really getting us to understand how we go out there and we ask for what we need and ask for what we want, and overcoming those insecurities of saying, this is the salary I want, this is the fees I want to charge. And while she predominantly focuses on careers, we're going to talk about careers, but also how this can pertain to you as a coach, especially us who are really afraid to ask for fees. Like many of the coachees that I work with who are coaches, like one of their big fears is, how do I charge? How do I ask for the money that I want? Mm-hmm. And so I'm excited to have Miss Courtney Bell on. And with that, I'm going to let Miss Courtney introduce herself, tell you about her and her company, and then we're going to get deep into this conversation. And as you guys know, I am straight no chaser. So we're going to pull back the onion and really have some good conversation about knowing your worth and how this impacts when you go ask for that salary, that raise, or that fee. So Courtney, tell everybody who you are.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here talking with you all. As Dawn said, my name is Courtney Bell, and I am a leadership coach and author. And more specifically, I help women increase their influence, impact, and income at work. And I am all about women advocating for what they deserve, whether that be a salary, the correct job title, a promotion, respect, boundaries, all of that. And with my clients, I help them gain the confidence to go after it. So on today's show, I'm looking forward to talking about knowing your worth, advocating for that, and really digging deep into you figuring out what you deserve. Because in my experience, I think that's where we can struggle. We struggle at not knowing what we deserve, then not knowing how much value we bring to the table, and being nervous about asking for more. Exactly. So I'm ready to get into it. Thank you so much for having me.
No, I'm glad you're here. And I know this is a very important topic. Like I said, when I'm working with other coaches in particular, one of the things that we talk about is that, that fee. Or even if a coach is an internal coach and they're working at a company and it's like, look, I feel like I should get a raise, or I feel like I should be making this figure. And they often will come back with, well, what if they don't give it to me? Or I'm afraid, what if I'm not worth that, right? So what would be your input to a female coach in particular when they're like, hey, I'm going to be hired as a coach at a company? How do I ask for what I feel is competitive? What would be your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One, you need to be familiar with what the actual market is paying for that kind of role at that kind of company. Okay. Because when I think internal coach, there are a number of different functions you can serve. And when it comes down to how much you can charge and how much you get paid, I like to say it's all about the impact that you have on the organization. So before you go into that situation, do your research, know what the market pays in your specific area and your industry, yes, but also make sure that you are ready to bring it so that you can command that higher salary, right?
Yes. And I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. Those are two big things.
Mm-hmm. And that's
two big ones. Knowing what, right? Knowing what the market pays, but also recognizing what you actually bring to the role so that you can command that higher salary.
And I think,
or fee.
Yes, exactly. And I think that is an area where women, like, we suffer from, or and men too. I don't want to make this thing like only women suffer from this, because there are men who are afraid to ask for what they want too. But women are socialized differently than men. Men tend to be more confident in asking for what they want, whereas women may not be. But with that said, you bring up a valid point, because some of us suffer from imposter syndrome and we don't realize how good we are. So if I'm going to come to the table and I'm like, yeah, I deserve this, right? Like, many of us don't think we deserve it. So what are your thoughts on how can we overcome imposter syndrome, and how can we validate for ourselves that, yeah, we deserve what we're asking for? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think when it comes to imposter syndrome, if you and I could create a pill that you just take it and it's gone forever, we would be very, very rich.
Yes, without a doubt. Yes. Yes.
Because it's so real, right? And honestly, I don't know if it ever totally goes away.
It doesn't.
However, you learn it doesn't. You learn your value and you know how to approach that situation.
Exactly.
As I was writing out my notes for this, I was like, when did I recognize that I was suffering from imposter syndrome, and when did I overcome it? And honestly, when I think about negotiating my salary, becoming a coach, and asking people to pay me 4 figures to work with me, those feelings go way back. They go way back to being taught that I come from humble beginnings. And, when you don't have a lot,
right,
you're not used to that.
Right.
You're used to getting by,
right,
to surviving.
Right.
And once I realized that I had let that sense of insecurity and scarcity push me through my career, that's when I stopped and changed everything. Because I had been hustling, trying to get ahead in corporate America.
Yes.
But really, I was just afraid of losing it all, right? I was very much afraid of that. And then I realized that that's how I was moving. And at the same time, I realized I'm pretty good at my job. I'm really good at what I do. And when I did that research to see how much do HR directors get paid in financial services in New York City, they get paid a substantial amount. And once I realized that I could do that job, and I realized what the market paid, that may sound like a very easy thing to do. But when you know that information, you can negotiate with that much more power, because you actually know this is what they pay for this kind of role. So let me do that role. And so when it comes to overcoming imposter syndrome, it's something that I struggle with as I level up, and move to different kind of milestones in my career. But I've just recognized I'm good at what I do. And it may take me telling myself that every day. Anytime I get on a live, or I'm live on a podcast, I have to be like, she asked you to come on for a reason.
For a reason.
Come powerfully.
That's right.
And come confidently.
That's right. And that was one of the things that I usually, when I'm mentoring other coaches, that's one of the things that I often say to them too. I'm like, people are hiring you, right? Like, yeah. And they refer you? Yeah. And you work for X and YZ company? So how good do you think you are? Because if you think about it, if you weren't good at what you did, you're right. I wouldn't have asked you to come on my podcast. Or, people wouldn't hire you, and you wouldn't be able to command the fee or the salary that you're asking for. And like, many of us started in our corporate America before we had our businesses, and some of us still do some corporate and our consulting. And one of the things that I did have to get through myself was imposter syndrome. And it was really interesting when you go in with the mindset and it's like, I'm going to ask for six figures. I'm going to ask for this. And if they don't give it to me, well, I will keep looking until I get it. And it was funny because I don't blink.
Yeah.
Like I never blinked when I started asking for exactly what I wanted. And I got it. Like the funny thing is when you come in confident and you're like, this is what I want. And I'm willing to walk away if I don't get it.
Yeah.
There's a certain respect. I think this is a little theory for me that I think you end up showing to them, wow, she can come in here with like, this is what I want and not blink and willing to walk away. You know your value and that informs them about how valuable you are.
Right. But, like, can I just add something really quick?
Yeah, I want you to. Yeah.
Even that walking in powerfully. Like I realize the imposter syndrome, but you literally have to practice it every single time. You can be walking into a meeting where it may be a 7-figure deal on the table. Before you go in, you practice what you're going to say. You get that look on that makes you feel powerful. And even if you may have imposter syndrome sneaking in and whispering in your ear, you just do it. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Yes. I like you said that because actually that's some of the things that I definitely tell my clients to do. I'm like, if you're going to ask for a fee, practice. I did that with my husband. Like my husband will always be my sounding board and I would always practice with him before I got into my groove. And the more you practice asking for that fee, the more you practice asking for that salary, it rolls off your tongue. And the more confident you feel about asking it. Because at that point, it doesn't necessarily matter what the response is. You felt good about asking for what you wanted. And so I highly recommend the practice. Keep practicing until you convince yourself that is what you deserve. Seriously. And it does go a long way.
Because if you have reservations about asking and you do not practice, that's going to come out when you are in those situations.
Yes, it does.
You know,
yes,
and you don't want it to come out then.
No.
It puts you at a disadvantage.
It does. It really does. And I can remember like when I was going for different jobs and I was really afraid, really early in my career to ask for a certain amount. And it actually forced me to flub the interview because once you go in not feeling confident and unsure, then you feel unconfident about, well, can I do this job? Well, I'm asking for this. Well, am I good enough? Am I good enough to ask for that? And then you don't do well in the interview itself. And it's the same thing.
Because you're in here.
Right, because you're in your head. Thank you. You said you hit it. You hit it. You're in your head. You're in your head guessing what somebody else thinks about you. And if you're in your own head, then it's going to be almost like that self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to demonstrate what you're thinking. And I tell my clients all the time, it's like, you have to know in your own mind who you are and what you're capable of.
Right.
And that will give you, and practice. And that will give you that confidence. So what would be 3 tips that you would give? And I know that because I know you do the career, I would love to say 3 tips for, especially internal coaches. Like, what would be your 3 tips on how do they approach that negotiation?
Well, 2 of them you just mentioned.
Good.
1, you need to be very clear, whether it's in your career, whether you're an internal coach or a coach running your own business, you need to be very clear on what you bring to the table. And what I mean by that is not me, Courtney, I have this degree, I have this certification. What value do you actually add? Because if you strip away the titles and all that fancy, what are you actually doing that's going to help the other person? What solution are you providing for this problem that they couldn't find a better solution anywhere else? you need to be really clear on that. Your value proposition. What is it?
What is it?
You know, right? Because you have it in your career, you have it if you're an internal coach or running your own business. So be very clear on it. And what I tell my clients is that is your personal brand. In your career, that's what you want to be known for. That's what you're really good at. I don't know about an elevator pitch. I don't really preach that.
I was about to talk about that.
Be very comfortable and confident in articulating that. Something else related to the salary negotiation, like I mentioned previously, being aware of what the market tends to pay for those services.
Definitely.
I didn't mention early on, but I'm also an HR director.
Right.
So I review proposals for leadership consultants, leadership coaches like myself. I've been looking at this for years on years on years. And one thing I will tell you is that if the fee is too high,
right,
that can raise eyebrows.
Right.
But if the fee is too low, it's also kind of worrisome, right?
Right.
So do your research. Talk to Coach Dawn. Make sure you have some proper guidance around that. Right. Because you don't want to let your insecurity come across in that at all. Because like you said, that is that self-fulfilling prophecy, and it just won't work for you. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is have a plan.
Yeah.
Have a plan when you go in.
Yeah.
You know, if you're in the kind of situation where you need to provide a proposal, make sure you have all of that prepared. Know exactly as much as you can, have a plan for that phone call, that Zoom call, where you've practiced so that you can go in and execute and be prepared. Because I think one reason people get very nervous when negotiating their salary or a fee is because they're afraid someone's going to say no. They're afraid they're going to say no.
Yes.
That is too high.
Rejection.
Rejection.
Yeah.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. It's scary.
Oh,
It's a human feeling. But also, if you don't ask, you're kind of rejected too.
Already.
Yes.
So
at just you gotta have that plan. And
right. Oh my God. I love you said that.
Yes. Yes. At least you get to set the stage.
That's what, exactly. One of the things that you said I think is important, because a lot of times people take that rejection as there's something wrong with them or they're not valuable enough. But like you just said, you have to know what people are willing to pay in your geographical area. Because like you said, you're in New York. So someone in New York is going to be willing to pay a lot more than maybe somebody in Maryland. You know what I mean? And so you may not be able to charge New York prices in Maryland for your services or for that salary. So you do have to know what's competitive. What are companies, what are people paying for what you do? And even if you come in and you say, this is my price, and they don't want it, that's not necessarily indicative of you or your value. You have to know your market. And that, like, I'm in Jersey, but I still can't necessarily charge New York prices. So I know this. You know what I mean? I know. So know your area, but also understand that it's not that something's wrong with you. And that fear of rejection, especially if you own your own business, that can happen. That can absolutely happen. But again, it's not you being rejected. And I often tell my clients, also I tell coaches a lot of times, hiring a coach is like, getting your favorite ice cream. Some people prefer chocolate, some people prefer vanilla, some people prefer strawberry, but that's not means that chocolate is bad or vanilla is bad.
Right.
It just means that people have a preference. And sometimes people aren't necessarily saying no to you and your services because you don't have value. You may not be their preference because every client is not for you. The same thing with people and working, being hired. Every employer is not for you. And you want to know that where you're going, you're making an impact. You know what I mean? And sometimes I tell people, not just looking at the money part, but what other things come with what you're asking for. Does that make sense? Or like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, should we also look at not just I'm asking for dollars, but what other things can we get that's also instrumental in this journey of negotiating fees, salary, and all that good stuff? Like, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Because you also said a couple of things that I wanted to comment on. Yeah, so that fear of rejection, right? I love the analogy of the ice cream. I really do.
Thank you.
Because another strategy that I found helpful as I've started my coaching business, I am a leadership coach.
Right.
And the title I see more frequently is career coach. But what distinguishes me? What makes me different than every other career coach? I don't write resumes. I don't do interview prep. I don't specialize in personal branding. I don't do LinkedIn.
Right.
I think that I've seen success in my business early on and not that much rejection because I'm very clear on what I provide and what I do not provide. And that helps me go after the right relationships.
That's right.
So I said everything that I don't do, but what I do is I help women in corporate America cross the 6-figure mark and increase their influence at work. Very straightforward, to the point. And if you're already an established executive, you may think, oh, I crossed the 6-figure mark 15 years ago. I don't need those services. Right. Or you may decide I'm right there in the 80s. I just need that extra push.
Right.
So even when it comes to rejection, I challenge folks to really get clear on what are you afraid of?
Yes.
Because if what you're offering is solid, you won't be rejected if you're in front of the right people.
Right. Exactly. Knowing your audience. Your audience. I like that. Yep.
Okay. And then the other question was around kind of identifying in some kind of arrangement besides the actual fee. What can you gain from that partnership, if you will?
Right.
I think a few things. I am big on the power of networking. And I think when you connect with people, even if it doesn't necessarily end in you signing a contract that day,
right,
you now have that company, that person in your network.
Very
also,
true. Yeah, go ahead.
You know? Very true. And the other thing, if you make an offer to someone and they say no, it's no,
right?
Maybe probe a little more. Well, is it not the right time? Is it the cost? Because like you said, more than likely, it's not because of what you're actually trying to sell them, especially if you are a coach looking to work with a company. Right. It could be timing. It could be you missed the budget cycle, so you can't be considered until the following year. It could be that you're talking to the wrong stakeholder there. Instead of talking to marketing, you need to talk to HR.
Yep.
So I would also say don't accept rejection just because you didn't get that contract in that moment. Keep going and find more value in what you learned, because those experiences mean something.
It does. It does. I want to share a personal story because I think this is very important, and I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. So when I was first started and I was in negotiations for doing some internal coaching for a company, a corporation, and they had said no. They said no. I was like, okay. I went on about my business, did what I had to do. 4 months later, they called me back. Hey, we would like to bring you back in and have a conversation. We're reconsidering. We were doing some reorgs, blah, 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 and it wasn't in our budget. And I'm like, cool. Came back in. We talked about it again. I still asked for exactly what I wanted. And actually, it was a little bit more at that point because now we're 4 months later. I'm like, well, now my prices are this now. But at the end of the day, they did hire me. Like, they did hire me about 4 months later. And so I like that you said that too, because sometimes that no right now might be a not this moment. And they could call you again. And if you keep nurturing that relationship, now I'll be honest, I wasn't nurturing a relationship. I kind of went on my other way. But I was lucky. I was very lucky in that situation. But I think that knowing what I know now, I would have continued to nurture the relationship just in case. Because one of the things, especially for coaches, people refer. And even if that company or that client couldn't use you, they might go, oh, you know what? I talked to Coach Courtney, and I think you should give her a call. Or Coach Courtney, I heard somebody I know might use your services. Here's their information. So just because somebody says no or not now does not mean it's a dead end. And I think that also goes back into that company and looking at, well, what other things could be important outside of money? Because networking and relationships are important. Other referrals are important. Like, there's certain other things that you can tap into that can push you forward even better than the dollar sign if we look at the value of other aspects. You know what I'm trying to drive home with?
Yeah, and also going back to your example, I doubt you got lucky. My guess
well,
is
thank you. Mindset is everything.
If you are clear on what you offer and they remember, they were like, we finally got our coins together. Hey, Dawn, can you still come in, please?
That's true.
Can you please?
That's very true. That's very true. Touche.
Another.
I love it. No, but you're right. You're 110% right. And being clear. And it's really funny because that is one of the things that I find a lot of coaches struggle with too. They are very afraid, again, that fear thing, of being narrow and specific about who they're targeting and what problem they solve, because they feel like they're going to leave money on the table. Or if I don't say everybody, I'm going to miss that client. And I'm like, no, it actually, you would think that being very narrow is counterproductive, but it actually is the thing that you need. You need to be very specific on who is your audience. Who are you speaking to? Because if you're speaking to everyone, you're not speaking to anyone. You know what I mean?
Right. The other thing is going back to the salary and gaining more beyond dollars from any kind of agreement. People need to treat their coaching businesses like businesses.
Get out my head. Get out my head.
It's a business. Even if you do not sign the contract in that moment, there are other parts of your business that require attention. Is this an opportunity where maybe you could be on that person's podcast or they come on yours, and that's some PR for you? That's some marketing. I don't know. If they are not available to sign up for your coaching services in this moment, would they maybe be interested in sponsoring some kind of event that you're having? I don't know. One thing that I'm really fortunate to have, as much as it also gets on my nerves, in my 9-to-5, sitting in HR, I've learned so much about how a company works.
Very true.
And when you're running, these multi-million-dollar companies, if you miss a business opportunity, okay, you write up what you learn, you put it in your CRM, and you keep it pushing to the next opportunity. If you get stuck on the, I could have done this and this didn't happen, and we don't count money that we don't have.
Thank you.
So if the contract didn't work out, that's okay.
That's okay.
It's okay. Lesson learned.
their lesson learned. And that's also business. Yes, one of my, because I do like the little affirmations and stuff on my social media. And one of the things I did point out was stop treating your business as a hustle. It is not a side hustle. It is a business. If you have an EIN number, if you're paying taxes, if you have AR, AP, and general ledgers and all that good stuff, you are a business. And as you know, in business, some relationships just aren't for you. And it's okay. And if you're targeting appropriately, you'll have less rejections. But again, what I wanted to really stress about that is not really about your value, though. When you knowing your worth is a whole different thing than the rejection. Rejection is not indicative of your value or your worth. And when you know your value and your worth, you don't take the rejection personally because it's business. Yeah. Like you said,
it's inevitable.
Right. It's inevitable because it's business. And if you know that, you lesson learned. What did I learn? How can I grow? What can I do differently? What do I need to fine tune in my brand or my message? That's really that's
and
the
keep it pushing.
And keep it pushing because it's not about your worth or your value. So, I love it. See,
another way to look at it.
Yeah.
Another way to look at it, if people are struggling with separating their value and their worth from rejection.
Yes.
Rejection is going to happen.
Yes.
As you were talking, I was trying to think in real life, what is an example of that? And this is not related to what we're talking about.
That's okay. That's okay.
You look at someone like Dwayne Wade.
Okay.
Player. Very handsome man, family man, rich.
Yes.
I could look at him right now, and as I'm writing my daily affirmation, say, I'm going to marry Dwayne Wade.
Right.
I'm going to be with him. That's my man.
Right.
First of all, he's married.
He's married, but
happily. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Not going to happen. That's a rejection. That is inevitable. Does that mean that I'm not incredible? That I can't attract a partner? No, it does not. It just means that he's not in tune with my personal brand. No. And it's just not in the cards for me. And that's okay. On to the next. It's really that simple.
That was perfect. That was perfect. Because how many of us...
I was like, let me not go too far.
No, but that was on point. And I think it illustrates exactly what happened to us, especially women. And many of us are into the affirmation and the positive thinking and all that good stuff. And I believe in it. Don't get me wrong. I do believe how you think creates your reality. But with that said, sometimes we think about things that's off brand. And it has nothing to do with our value. It's just that what we think we want is off brand. And your analogy, hey, this man is in love with his wife, Gabby. Gabrielle Union, he's in love with her. And he'll be off brand. No.
You got to reel it in.
You don't have to use that with our clients. It's like, no. And it's all right that you thought about it positively and you wished it into the universe, but he's off brand for you.
Right. He's off brand. It's not going to happen.
That. We don't use that. That's a good one. Yeah.
You bring up another good point, though, on the off brand. Just going back to that rejection. Sometimes you need that rejection to let you know you're off brand. You've gone too far off the deep end.
Yes.
Really back in. Yes. Like, what do I look like? Like something, I'm a leadership coach. And after this, I might be like, Dawn is so positive, and she was talking about affirmations. Let me go write an affirmation journal.
That's
Sounds
now
nice.
off brand.
But is that something? Yeah, but is that something
right.
I need to explore?
Right.
No, it's not. Right. Is that something that if I take the time to pull all these emotions out of me and I write this affirmation journal for a month, could I have been working on gaining more coaching clients for my program that starts in December?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And sometimes, and this is going to hurt someone's feelings, we go a little off brand because we're uncomfortable with the position that we're in our business. You may have gone through some rejection, and instead of getting back on the horse and trying again, I'm just going to go make an affirmation journal. I'll be back. Exactly. I'll be back. You'll see me eventually.
Exactly.
And you can't do that.
And you
got to get back on the horse.
But doesn't this go back to knowing your worth, knowing your value, knowing yourself, knowing your audience, doing your research? It still all kind of ties in together, because once you know you, and once you know your audience, and once you know your brand message, then you are least likely to go off brand. That doesn't mean that you might not experiment and dip your toe and see how things work. And experimenting is all well and fine. But at the end of the day, knowing yourself and knowing what your audience wants from you, that keeps you on brand. And I think so this leads me into a question that just hit me, is do you think we go off brand, or do you think we don't know our worth because we're confused with that and the fact that we were rejected? Like, that rejection hits us personal, and we associate it to, well, you said no, not because I'm off brand, but because there's something wrong with me. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Are we confused?
Yeah, I think it's both.
Okay.
I think it's both. I honestly, as I was preparing for this too, something you asked me, what causes these feelings of low self-worth? And I think for us as women, us as Black women, that's a pretty loaded question.
It is a loaded question.
It's a loaded question.
It is.
And it can change for everyone, right? And I wrote down that I think some of the feelings can be individualized.
Absolutely.
But also, this society is not doing us any favors. They're not. They're not telling us to ask for what we are worth. They're not telling us to go out of our comfort zone and try new things. In fact, they want us to stay in this little bitty box.
Yeah.
And when we, you know the box.
Yeah.
And when we try to step out of that box, they remind us that, no, you need to stay there. So let me throw this obstacle, like your natural hair. You can't wear that. Go back in your little corner. Go back in your little box. I don't have time for that. I don't. And if you experience rejection, I know that it's hard to just keep going. But I have found that surrounding yourself with other women that are just as driven, that are moving and grooving just like you. Yeah. If I turn to you, Dawn, and I say, I didn't get this contract that I want, you say, oh, okay, I was there a couple of years ago. You'll be fine. You can do it. This is how I did it.
That's right.
You will be able to move forward.
That's right.
You will.
Right.
And those feelings of confidence, you'll build on it, and your confidence will definitely get stronger.
Agreed. And you see, we're having such a good time. And see, I gotta get my read glass. I gotta keep track of time. See, look at us. Good. We got some time. Ooh, I'm like, yeah, because this is a good conversation. Okay. I'm enjoying this conversation. So, and I agree with that too. Me too. One of the things that my background is in social cognition, and a lot of my research is in help-seeking behavior. And one of the things that I found looking at the studies is that what you said, and I'm going to tap on that too, especially how it relates to people of color, but is learned behavior, especially with women, that we are socialized to be submissive. We're socialized that we are the weaker vessel. We're socialized that we need saving, we need help. And that does something to us psychologically on also knowing our value also. And when you break this down into the African American community, what does society say about Black women? Half the time we're invisible, right? And when we're not
that whole part,
that whole part, that right there, right?
that whole part.
And or when we do get the gumption to say, no, I'm valuable, we're the angry Black woman, or we're too sensitive, or how dare you. And see, and that's a conversation that our society is just scratching the surface, trying to have a conversation, and we're nowhere near getting into the throes of a real conversation. We're just scratching that surface.
Right.
But you know what I'm saying? It's when we as women start to ask for what we believe we're worth, society kind of pushes back, because we have to admit it is a male patriarchal type of society. And a woman's place is like, here's men and here's women, you know? And I think that us having to contend with that also feeds into our insecurities of asking for what we want. Because I've known some men who they can talk a big game about who they are, and they still feel very confident in asking for what they want. And women can be the sun, the moon, and the stars, and we still can't see how valuable we are. So what are your thoughts on that? I said a lot. I just want to see if anything came up for you by me sharing those thoughts.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about the vice president debate a couple weeks ago when Kamala Harris said, when she paused and she said, "I'm speaking," and she waited for him to stop talking. If that was not this conversation in a nutshell.
Understood. But it does connect.
He really thought, it definitely connects. He thought he was going to come at her sideways, stomp all over her like he does to other people in his life, clearly. Right. And what did she say? She stood up straight and she said, "I'm speaking." She gave him look after look after look after look. And she said, "I am speaking."
Yes.
And you can say what you want about her politics, but she is a trailblazer.
And she
stood up there as the candidate for the vice presidency, and she stood in all of it.
She stood her ground. Yes, she did.
Would I be brave enough today to go do that? I don't know, but we're being trailblazers in our own right.
Right.
By standing up and doing something that you may not have ever thought was possible.
Right.
Maybe you've never seen it done by a woman, a Black woman, a woman of color in your workplace, but you are doing it.
Exactly.
I think more of us just have to keep doing it. That's the only way we can normalize it. Will they hate on us? 100%.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
But that's why we're doing it together.
That's
so I can look across the way and I see you and I know that we got each other's back.
Likewise. Yep.
And whatever the Pences of the world decide to do, go do that
over there. I'm still going this way. And I think you make a perfect, really good example with this, because Kamala got a lot of backlash afterwards. And of course, we knew that was going to happen, but it was, she was like, I think one senator or governor called her the B word. Like, they literally called her the B word. It's like, really? Yeah. But that goes back to what I was just saying, is that when we speak up, excuse my language, people, we're a bitch. We're trying to be men.
Right.
We don't know our place. Right. We're angry. And society will remind us, like you said, stay in your box, stay in your lane. This isn't for you.
Right.
I saw articles. I don't want Camilla to be president. So if I vote for Biden and something happens to him in office, Camilla will become president. I don't want that, because they're not used to seeing women in power. They're not used to seeing that.
Did nobody ask you all that? No one asked you all that.
Exactly. And it's like, but this is, and that's at that scale, but we experience that at these scales, trying to get jobs, trying to get clients, and we experience that same exact thing because they're not used to seeing women business owners, women leaders, women in charge, because that's not what we've been socialized to do. And so if you're feeling insecure, understand there's so much priming, so much learned behavior, so much institutionalized education that goes into what you're feeling about asking for that salary, and better still, knowing your worth when we live in a society that reminds us, well, technically you're a second-class citizen, you know.
Technically.
Anything else you want to add? Oh my gosh, you just got me goosebumps with this, and just so many things that we've hit on that I think our listeners, clients, my clients, your listeners, my listeners, that if they're really listening to this, what I hope they walk away with, Courtney, is that it might feel like it's about your worth, but it's not. When you're getting these kind of, as long as you know what you bring to the table, and I want to be clear about that too, because you can be confident and bring crap to the table. But as long as you really know your value, and there are, like I had pointed out, there's tall tale signs. Are people hiring you? Are people calling you? Are people interested? You know, you are making an impact if people are interested in you. So that tells you a lot right there. But at the end of the day, you can't get confused, or I should say that, let me rephrase that. Hopefully we can give people a different way of looking at this, that while it's about you, it's not really about you. Does that make sense? Not really.
It's not taking away from you and what you bring to the table. It's a business.
It's a business.
It's a bit like they just released a new iPhone last week.
I know.
I'm not buying that phone. I'm not buying the phone. Does that mean Apple's gonna fall apart?
No.
Do they care that no, they don't. You need to operate your business like it's at that level, right? And the other thing I would say as we wrap up, it is a daily effort to make sure that you're bringing that value, you're exuding that confidence, that you're ready to demand that type of salary.
I agree.
And that's okay. We all do it. We all feel those feelings of imposter syndrome, of self-doubt. But it's really, how do you recognize it? How do you overcome it and still execute?
I agree.
And you can.
100%.
It just takes practice.
It is. And it is practice. And one of the things I do tell a lot of coaches, and this is an International Coaching Federation's core competency, is always be in a position of learning and professional development, because it is important for you to always develop your skills. So for you to go in and command that salary or command that fee, you have to make sure that you have developed to that role so that you can ask for it. So like you said, if you've done your research and you know what they're paying for, and you have the skill set and you have the training and you've developed, there is no reason for you not to want to ask for whatever it is you feel comfortable asking for. No reason whatsoever.
Right.
So you have to come correct. You have to make sure you are in that position to ask for it. You can't come in with a high school diploma and say, well, you know what, I've never coached anyone, but I want 6 figures and I don't have any training. Like, know where you are.
Right.
Know where you are. And that doesn't say that you don't have value. It just means you have more growth. Right. Know where you need to grow.
Right, exactly.
That's it. You know what I mean? Yes. Oh, see? A topic near and dear to my heart. Is there anything else you would like to share with everyone, or any thoughts, any questions, anything that you would feel like you want to hit home and drive this away with?
Celebrate your wins. We've talked a lot about overcoming challenges, but also celebrate your wins. Like you just said, if people are reaching out to you, they want to work with you, you're doing well.
You're doing right. Yep.
Take a moment, celebrate your wins, and that will also help you with your confidence.
Isn't that a great note to leave on? Yes. Okay, yeah, celebrate your wins, everybody. This was worth the wait. This was worth the wait for real talk. Oh my gosh. So I really do hope everyone enjoyed you, Courtney. I enjoyed you.
Thank you. This was great. Thank you so much.
Great, good feedback, good topic, good information. You guys, where can people find you, Courtney? Tell us where we can find you.
Yes, so my website is thecourtneyball.org, BALL.org. And I am on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. You can find all my links there. I'm on Twitter. And I love networking with people and would definitely welcome networking with other coaches. So Find me, I'm here. I didn't tell you, Dawn, I just moved to New Jersey. I'm in Bayonne.
Really?
Okay.
Oh,
yeah. So are we neighbors now?
Love it.
Oh, okay. Not quite.
You way north. That's so good. Well, I used to live up in New Jersey. So yes, and my husband used to work in Bayonne. So yes, some nice places to go eat up there. We're gonna have to talk about that.
Yes, I need all of those.
Yes, you should all of that. Yes. Well, welcome to join me.
Thank you.
All right. Well,
thank you so much.
Yes, I'm glad that you were here. Of course, anytime you're more than welcome to come back. We consider you a friend of the show. Again, check out Courtney. She is amazing, as you can already hear. And yes, everybody, remember, you know your worth. Do your research. We are excited and celebrate those wins. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Go out there, everybody, create awesome sauce for yourself and for others.